plenty to go through. Maybe we should do a quick round of introductions. I'm looking to see, Sheriff Nole, do you have Navigator Walsch coming on?
I was going to say he is actually on a mission today.
Okay.
Taking a person to SeaTac Airport. I can tell that story later if anyone wants to hear it. But.
All right then. Does everybody know everybody, or do we need to go around and introduce each other?
Lori, we've been together for so long. I was going to tell Frank and Lori that the reason we're juggling back and forth is because all of us have been together over the last 3 or 4 days on different meetings of some kind.
Okay, well then we're just going to skip introductions.
I think we all know everybody really well.
Yeah. All right. So let's quickly, John, I wondered if you could give Sheriff Nole just a quick overview of what this group is doing. And I know that we might end up it somewhat again if we get the Navigator here.
Sure. So Sheriff Nole, we, as part of the HRSA grant that we're working on, we wanted to do some activities in South County to try to be more geographically balanced in the work that we're doing. And so we're on a journey of harm reduction in South County. And I think, as you know, harm reduction can take a lot of different formats, but what we've been looking at is a short-term goal of implementing a naloxone program, and then a longer-term goal of potentially a syringe exchange with some wraparound services for those people who come in for syringe exchange. I think Lori and I mistakenly believed that we could snap our fingers and put a naloxone distribution program in place, and it's just proved to be a little more complicated than we thought it was going to be. So that's the thing that we're kind of in the process of discussing right now. I think we have some of the pieces together, but not all of them yet. And so our work is really right now around trying to put a naloxone program in South County. And then I think once that's done, we'll look at other opportunities. And there is one other thing that's in the HRSA grant that I think kind of aids this work and helps, which is the kind of looking at stigma and how to reduce stigma in our communities. And I think we'll probably, whatever stigma work we do in the northern part of Jefferson County, we want to make sure we do that and potentially emphasize that in South County, since that may help some of the other work that we're doing. Lori, did I leave anything out, or was that a pretty good overview, do you think?
Oh, it's a great overview. And then I wanted to also underscore, I think it might have been Trish who said, yeah, we really need to get the sheriff's office, maybe even the Navigator, involved in this group down here. So I really appreciate that you have come to represent the sheriff's office here. And maybe I should just leave it open if there's anybody from down there, Trish or Chief McKern or Frank, who has any questions that they have for the sheriff or anything specific that they'd like to learn from him at a future meeting.
I think we can also call Greg a South County-er as well.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, and if I could just add, it was kind of a scary moment because Lori sent out the invite to our Navigator, and I saw it, and I saw what it was for, and I thought, well, I want to do that. And I was scared to ask her because I thought she was going to say, no, we already talked about that. We don't want you there. But
never would happen.
Well, and I live in Chimacum, so I'm partway down that way. And I actually, when I came to Jefferson County, I started with the Forest Service down in Quilcene. So that was my base of operations for about 3 years or so. And then I continued down there for 7 years. But South County always has a special place in my heart. And I anything we can do to be involved down there, just like we are up here in the North County, there's no excuse for that. And so I'm full on for doing down there what we do up here. And anyway, so I'm at your disposal, whatever I can do be part of the group or help. And when the Navigator's here, we'll have him come on too. But today was a weird thing, and so he's unavailable.
Well, no worries. I've heard good things about him and what he's already contributing here in the community.
Well, thanks. And thanks for, and I'm not being funny, but for allowing me to be part of the group. And
Is his name John Walsch? Is that his name? The Navigator?
Yeah, he's the guy that used to be on the TV show America's Most Wanted. No, it's not him, but it's the same name.
Yeah, I've had really great interactions with him. He's been very helpful.
Good.
Well, that's excellent. If there are no further questions around the sheriff at this point, I thought we might transition quickly because I know Greg has to skedaddle to a Jefferson Transit meeting some way into this meeting. So Greg, could you give us a bit of an update? We were talking about what you were doing over at the transit and how it connects in with the work we're doing down here.
Sure. Mostly it was related to accessibility. I think I had to leave early at the last meeting because we're working on a strategic plan. I was going to make a pitch for continuing free service and also looking at considering more frequent trips on the Quilcene route. And surprisingly, not only did all the transit board members support kind of go forward free fares, but staff, which had previously been very resistant to it under the kind of the guise that it just wasn't done and they would likely lose funding for it, are now saying that in the post-COVID or in the current landscape of inclusion and equity, it's very doable, and it won't risk any funding, and that it is something that we can pursue. So we have another strategy meeting today, going over some surveys and everything. And I argued that more trips to Quilcene and Brennan and Port Ludlow would be more important than a new route to Kingston, and that item did not have as much concurrence with everyone. You know, the mission kind of includes both of those, both tourism as well as providing basic transportation services to Jefferson County residents. So as to the more trips, that is an ongoing topic. And as to the free fare, I think that we're going to make that happen.
That's really good.
I think that's really good. It reminded me, like I said, when I worked down at the Forest Service, and for a while I was taking the bus from Hadlock, and if you didn't get out of the office by 5 o'clock, you'd be stuck in Quilcene and have to walk back. And back then, I don't even know if there were taxis.
Right.
So
yeah,
I was surprised at the limitation on. I mean, I was glad we had buses, but I was surprised at how often they ran, especially South County, which always seems to get the short end of the stick, it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot less dense, of course. So mass transit, is easier to pencil in more urbanized areas. The one other thing I wanted to report on was, I think we had discussed a little bit about van pools and things, and other ways to get access to healthcare or get people to healthcare. And just a quick update that van pools, while they are very underutilized, and if anyone in Quilcene needs to commute to Jefferson, Port Townsend or anything, if there's a group of people or vice versa, it's none are being used currently, but they are controlled by RCW, which really mandates that van pools are only used for commuting to work. So there are some that would be very low cost options if we have more than one person that needs to do a regular commute in collaboration. But Department of Emergency Management does have a memorandum of understanding with Jefferson Transit currently to use one of their cutaways, one of the short buses that's still ADA accessible and everything for, I think it was originally used for shut-ins and people with accessibility issues to access COVID testing. And it's not really been used for vaccines or anything. And I think it might go fallow pretty soon. But if there's something in the harm reduction in South County program that would require that kind of transportation, I think DEM would be the nexus to get access to that vehicle. And that's it.
Thank you. So
Great.
questions, John?
Yeah, just actually a comment. So Greg, I'm on the Transit Citizen Advisory Committee, and I will support your suggestions as well from that point of view. And I know that group has been very interested in no fares in the past and had a lot of discussion about that. So I know that group is totally supportive of that. And I'll also, talk about the importance of which I actually have been talking about, but the importance of more trips to Quilcene and Brandon.
Great. Thanks for your support, John.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Greg, for, I don't know how you got involved with maybe you're forced to be involved with the transit. I don't know, but it's a resource that it came up in some emergency management stuff I was working with, where at a meeting where they talked about they could run buses out to the West End to transport people if there was some kind of a disaster or something. And it struck me to me, it seemed kind of like an underused resource that we have that at least now, and I don't know about before, but is totally willing to help and be part of how can we make things better in Jefferson County. So that's anyway, thanks for being part of that. And you too, John, for being on the committee. I'm sure you get paid a lot for that.
Everybody's dying to pay John. Speaking of paying John, do you want to talk to us about the resource cards, John?
Yeah, so I think this group made a suggestion that we look at, I'm looking to see, I think I've got one on my desk here, that we create some packets for South County folks that have our resource card, and then just a little information about how we recognize that, during COVID, it's been a difficult time for folks, and that, CHIP is trying to do what we can do to support people. So I have 200 of the cards with a little message stapled to them, ready to go. And I think the plan was to have them distributed at the Quilcene School, the Brennan School, and one other place. Lori, can you help me remember?
There were three churches too that we wanted to get some to.
Okay. So any thoughts about how I can get those to you guys? They're here right now at the hospital. I may have one of my employees heading to Quilcene in the next week or so to do some work down there, and I could potentially have him take them, or other thoughts you guys have about how to get them down to you.
My wife works at Salish Coast, and so not that far away. She could bring the set down for all of the South County stuff, and we can distribute it from there.
Okay. So I could definitely get them from here to Salish Coast.
Okay.
I can do it too. I going down to Quilcene all the time, so.
Or more accurately, coming to Port Townsend all the time, probably, right?
Both.
Frank, what's your wife's name?
Sharon.
Okay. So if I took them to Salish Coast and said for Sharon Redmond, would that work? Okay, that's what I'm going to do.
One of the things I wanted to highlight, and I don't know where they'll be going out, but I have a contact, Dana, not going to remember her last name, maybe Carson. She goes to the Assembly of God Church there.
Dana Ward.
Dana Ward, thank you. And she suggested for the amount that we were going to leave with her church to just lean them against the front door, put them in a bag or something, lean them against the front door. And she'll make sure that they're brought in and put by the bulletins so that they're handed out on the weekend. Anything else on that topic?
I guess just when John goes to Salish, you might have to ask for Mrs. Redmond if she's a teacher. Don't want to be too familiar.
At all. let's talk a little bit about the upcoming Jefferson County Education Partnership meeting and what we're going to be doing there. When we spoke last week or last month, we talked about a few of us going to this meeting and sort of introducing the topic of exploring how we could bring naloxone into the school as a sort of life skills, both having its presence there and maybe some training or some progression from one to the other. And I've been going back and forth. Thanks so much, Frank, for getting me connected with Dr. Engel. He was very responsive. What we have learned is the meeting is going to be on June 7th. It is their first in-person meeting, and so they're going to be having a dinner. It's going to be quite a thing. And so they've asked us, and I appreciate this, to limit who we send to just the one person. And my gut instinct when I discovered that Dr. Karlbaum could make that meeting and could be there in person is to send him. I thought that he might be able to well field whatever questions there are. He's very knowledgeable on the topic. But before I went with that, I wanted to check in with this group and see how you feel about who we should be sending to that meeting. And if not Dr. Karlbaum, who would be a better choice?
I think Dr. Karlbaum is an excellent choice, with the exception that you might have to reach back out to them. Someone from this, preferably you, should go with Dr. Karlbaum, because Dr. Karlbaum is a great guy, but he does not have, he's only been here less than a year, and he's still learning how to be an MPD. And some of the stats he might give them are statistics that he picks up from Seattle and King County. So relating it back down to Jefferson County, it's probably going to take two. So they'd have to accept two, and that would be yourself and Dr. Karlbaum. I would think that would be a good fit unless the group has something else. But as far as we'll definitely need to, you kind of focus him just a little bit. Great guy. I don't have anything wrong, but he's definitely very rounded at the 60,000 foot level, but he'll need some help at the 10,000 foot level.
And
Thank you.
What's the meeting?
This is the Jefferson County Education Partnership. And Frank, maybe you could tell us a little more about sort of what that is and who composes it.
Sure. So we call it JCEP. Like you said, the Jefferson County Educational Partnership is the 4 school districts in East Jefferson County. So Brennan, Quilcene, Chimacum, and Port Townsend. So superintendents and 2 board members meet approximately every quarter just to kind of talk about things that are happening in East Jefferson County schools and find ways to collaborate and exchange information.
Any other feedback to how we position ourselves for that meeting?
Only to support Chief McKern. I think Karlbaum's an excellent choice. He knows his stuff. He can speak very eloquently. He just needs the guidance of knowing what the local playing field is. But boy, there isn't a person that can speak more strongly to the drug use and the ramifications and the consequences in our communities and in what he deals with daily at Harborview Intensive Care. He can make it very real, very honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to back up what Tim was saying, that the more we have data that is specific to South County, the more convincing the argument will be.
Thank you. That's a good point.
Is naloxone being used in any of the other schools in the county?
Yes, it is. 2 of the school districts have passed policies that they have it at the school-based health clinic. I think maybe all 3 have it at the clinic, although it's the other 2 that set the policy that allowed for some training of administrative and staff folks on the administration of naloxone. And I don't think that has been even picked up or thought about at the Quilcene School District as of yet. And so, some of the intent of this is for Dr. Karlbaum to bring that up at this meeting that happens to have some Quilcene board members, and then we'd probably do some follow-on discussion with the Quilcene board themselves to explore, what their questions are, what sorts of things make sense to them, and the landscape that they know so much better than I do.
Well, that's what I was kind of wondering, if there'll be people from the other schools there that will say, oh yeah, we're doing that.
Mhm.
And then is the health department involved in training, or is that totally different now?
At the school-based health clinic, I'm sorry, at the Chimacum School District, they had, I want to say their dean of students, Mark Gudger, I'm not sure what his role is. I think he was the one who was in charge of doing the training. And he enlisted sort of the support of Susan O'Brien, who is the clinician at the school-based health clinic there, if I've got that right. And so they have done some training, but I don't think any of them are training students at this stage.
Well, now that you say that, we carry it, and I remember when we first got it, I think we sent someone to the health department and they were trained, and then they came back and showed the rest of us how to use it.
Some of what we might explore, which may be way outside the realm, but eventually is thinking of it as a life skill course that you would teach along with, AED, and trying to think of what other things that are, CPR.
Well, that's what we do now when we have our first aid CPR. That's just part of it now, as a refresher on using it.
Okay, so to summarize, I'm going to go back. I'll see if there's any opening for a second person. They were pretty clear with me. They only wanted one. But what we can do, if that is the case, is John and I want to underscore how important John would be to this conversation, can work with Dr. Karlbaum to be very specific about what data we'd like him to focus on, or to show up, in comparison with some other place, just so that they've got something really relevant to the Quilcene area.
Or Lori, we could offer to go and not have dinner too, just be there for his presentation part or whatever.
You share the dinner.
I did offer that, but I think they're just in such a mode of, they have quite an agenda. They want to make sure that we don't hijack what's going on down there. And I don't blame them if this is their first meeting all together. It should be a celebratory thing. And I want to just be grateful for how much time David has given us on that agenda. But if they were having something really good, I don't know. Okay, coming back to our list of things we're trying to get through. John, do you want to talk to us a little bit about Jefferson Healthcare's role in hosting and distributing the naloxone?
Yeah, so Lori, this is news for you. I talked with Heidi Matthews this morning. She's the clinic manager for the Quilcene Clinic. And unfortunately, this is not a hard stop, but the primary provider that has been working at that clinic is on a medical leave right now, which is through most of the summer. So that clinic is not, it's staffed, but with not a permanent person. So I think the message that she wanted me to transmit to you is they're still very interested in doing this, and they still think they would like to do it, but they would like us to see if we can put a pause until late in the summer or fall, when their primary provider is going to be back more regularly in the clinic. So that's the update I have about that. I think, at this point for us, we could say, are there other places that might be able to do that? Or we could say we're willing to wait until the fall to try to put those pieces into place.
Well, I do know that next, Dr. Karlbaum had let me know that he couldn't come to this meeting, but at the next meeting, he would be willing to cover the topic of any conversations he's been able to have with the Department of Health about using the EMS as a place. So that might be some place to fill that gap, but I'm open to other conversation on that topic.
I'm thinking Greg's house might be a good place to do that.
Greg, could we just put a little, maybe a little hut in the front of your house? And
I'll ask my wife. I can tell you what her answer would be, but this is recorded, so I probably shouldn't use that language.
Quilcene will defer to Dr. Karlbaum, because if he tells me we're going to put it here, then I guess I'm going to put it here. He's kind of the guy in charge, so.
Right.
Well, I think that's great, Lori. Let's just, we have this information now. We'll see what Dr. Karlbaum says next meeting. And, I think the Jefferson Clinic is an ace in the hole. I do think something that Heidi communicated to me is that they would be willing to be a distribution place as well as a distribution place for both other organizations that are giving naloxone, but also to patients or to, community members that needed that. So I think once they get on board, it's going to be a really good thing for the community. And I know there are people who will want to go to that clinic and people who will want to go somewhere else. And I think it's good to have those options available.
Okay, so to be continued on that topic. Thanks,
Yep.
John, for getting some feedback to bring to the meeting, because you were right, I didn't have that one in hand.
Yep.
Well done. Then the other question I have down is, do we know if Dr. Erickson at Jefferson Healthcare?
I emailed him and asked him if he, and actually Lori may know this, but I emailed him to ask him if he's just doing prescriptions or actually handing out naloxone, but I haven't heard back from him. So that's information that I'll definitely have before the next meeting. And Lori, I don't know if you know if he actually distributes or just gives people prescriptions.
I don't. That's the one thing I would be interested in knowing. Lori, do you?
Actually, it was the other Lori.
Oh, sorry.
Lori Tinker, I was asking.
The real Lori.
The real Lori. Let's ask her.
Not the French Lori. My understanding is it's just scripts. They're not.
Okay.
They don't hand out.
The actual naloxone.
Yeah, they don't hand out the drug itself.
Okay. All right. There's your answer.
All right. Thank you, Lori. It's always good to have the informed Lori on this call. Okay, the only other thing I have on the agenda is if we wanted to talk a little bit about generating any specific asks. I know we've talked a little bit about Jefferson Transit because we've just sent Greg off to that meeting, but Jefferson Healthcare's wound care. We've talked about we wanted to have somebody from the wound care line of awareness in this meeting. And I think John and I want to make sure that we have some very specific things that we're asking of them if we ask them to come to the meeting and spend the time here. And I can't remember where the conversation originated around bringing wound care.
Dr. Carlbaum may have been at least part of that conversation, but Chief McCurran may also have some specific questions that he's interested in finding out.
What we were referring to, Laura, in that particular topic was a project that we did down in Mason County. We did it with the community outreach that we tried with our paramedic home-based service. And what we did was, and it will take Lori in the hospital, letting us know when they send somebody home post-surgery that we do a follow-up with them a couple of days to make sure A, they're seeing their provider, and B, that they're also taking the medicines and making sure the wound's looking somewhat good, if you will. So I think that's what he's referring to. That would be our first stint of trying to get somebody back in the homebound arena to take a look at it. Jefferson Home Health does a really, really good job. And I think we're going to have to tie in with them and connect up with those folks to say, is there anything we can do to help you with an outreach? Maybe it's you can't find an address. Maybe it's the scene's a little hostile and the patients are not so combative. So there's a lot of variables there. And I believe that's what Dr. Carlbaum was referring to, is because he and I had a conversation about that.
Okay, and I do remember.
Just one addition to that, or an extension of that, is that what we do see on occasion is the home health gals do an excellent job, but they reach their endpoint. They do what they can do, but then they have to be referred to because they're not wound care specialists. And believe me, having been clinical for a long, long time, it has been developed into a level of specialty that is quite well, certainly well beyond me too. And so at that point, then they refer them to the wound care clinic to come in and do that. Unfortunately, then that's when transportation becomes a real issue because almost hands down, if the wound is bad enough that they need to come in for wound care, they're not transporting themselves. So then how do they get in, and then how do they get home? And it is not at all unusual from Chief McKern's area that they are an EMS transport up to the hospital because of a complaint, and then they're here, and then it's like, how do we get them back, since if they're not admitted? And so I think, although what wasn't at the meeting that Dr. Carlbaum talked about this, I think in another EMS meeting, it was like, how, is this a, I don't want to say service, because I know that will scare everybody to death, but is that, is this something that EMS folks could be a little bit more, the medics could be a little bit more involved in doing some home visits for care that keep people in their home instead of carting them to the hospital. So.
That's good insight. And I know we were trying to get a sense of what our volume was there. We talked about looking at the EPIC data on the geography and volume. And then you're right, we had talked a bit about using home health care, maybe even as a means of tracking some way, somehow. But I think it was Dr. Carlbaum who might have had some ideas around there. So we're really missing him today in terms of productive conversation. Is there anything else that we'd like to cover? I'm tempted to just call it a day here on this meeting. When we get together next, we should have Dr. Carlbaum. Next time we will have had the meeting at the JCEP, the JCEP meeting. And we should have some insight as to whether we've given you folks enough of those resource cards to pass out. Is there anything else anybody would like to make sure I'm running with before we sign off? Chief McKern.
Hey, you got me this time.
I know, I'm so sorry about last meeting. We had another meeting and he was practically jumping up and down and nobody saw him.
Sheriff, is there any chance that we could, by next meeting, maybe get some locations from Navigator calls? South County versus Central County. That would be some of a help too, to kind of get us.
I think so. Yeah.
Maybe because it's gonna be a couple months now since he started, and maybe he could help us get some county data. That work for you guys?
Absolutely.
I think that's something that could be done. We're still working the kinks out of that reporting stuff, but
I think it's so important that, Joe, you're gonna have to come back to our next meeting. We're just gonna invite you. That's all there is to it. So thanks. We appreciate that you would want to do that.
yeah.
It was Frank's recommendation, so.
All right. Oh, okay. All right. Any other thoughts before we sign off? Okay, we'll go forth and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
See everybody.
John, I don't know if you saw.
Oops, I'm sorry. Hey, John.
I did.
Oh, can you sign on just for a minute?
Yep, I can.
I'll sneak
Hold on.
on. No, I was wondering almost the same question. I'm wondering if we could do an epic look to see about wound care in the South. Certainly just triangulating with zip code or something that might give us an indication as to how much home health is visiting in the South County.
Yeah, I would say there's two looks we might want to take. One would be home health wound visits in South County, and the other one would be South County wound visits to the emergency room.
Yeah.
For wound care.
Yeah, it's a problem, and it's a problem probably not so much because of the numbers, the overwhelming numbers of hundreds and hundreds of people, but the overwhelming complexity of the few people that that have to access that, or who need that kind of care, or worst case scenario, avoid that kind of care until it becomes catastrophic, and they're just in a hell of a mess before they actually come in. So that might be interesting.
Let me see
Okay.
what I can get from that.
Okay, cool beans.
You agree those two things?
Yes.
Wound care from South County for home health hospice, and then ED wound care from South County.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
Ready?
Bye-bye.
Bye.